What's going on, everyone? I'm Steve from Burke Family 54 Comics, joined by my good friend Dave from Mark Spector Comics. What's up, Dave?
What's going on? What's going on, Steve? Thanks for having me on for this awesome topic that has been caught a lot of the community's eyes the last about a month or so.
Absolutely, absolutely. This is kind of like an impromptu live that I hope a lot of people watch on the replay. We're going to be talking about the CGC scandal, CGC overall, whether you guys should be trusting them right now or not. We have some different takes on this. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, and tell your friends. So this is a topic that I have really not delved into that much. There's been a lot of people posting about this over the last couple weeks. Lots of videos being made, people doing it for different reasons. Clicks, I feel like, is a lot of it. But yesterday there was, I think it was actually maybe a day and a half ago, there was an interview posted by West Coast Dave Inger with the head grader, Matt Nelson at CGC. And I listened to the whole thing yesterday. I thought it was a really good interview, and I felt like, it kind of inspired me to come on here and talk a little bit about it. I think Dave has got some maybe internet issues. I don't know. So I decided, you know what, let's go ahead and I was going to make a video on this, actually. I reached out to Dave, and I was like, hey, what do you think about my list here? And he's like, I'd love to talk about this. I'm like, okay, let's just go live and talk about this. So Dave, I've been talking quite a bit about this CGC stuff here with Matt Nelson's interview. You just got done listening to it. I wanted to get your initial thoughts on Matt Nelson's interview over on the West Coast Dave Inger's YouTube channel.
Yeah, so for you guys who are not aware, Matt Nelson is the president of CGC. He's been the president, I think, for probably a few years now, if I'm not mistaken. But I was honestly surprised that somebody from the YouTube community was able to get him on in an interview, especially talking about the ongoing investigation. He's not somebody you often see in the public figure, especially, for a big corporation like that. You could probably attest to this, Steve, how many times you've seen Matt Nelson interview. I think the last time I remember seeing him was probably on Reggie Collect's channel, probably a few years ago. That's how far back with him and I forget her name, Brittany. She's now the head of the Signature Series portion of CGC. But that was probably the last time. I'm sure he probably has, but I
kind of forgot that he was on there. Now that you say that, yeah, it was like
4 or 5, a while,
maybe even 6 years ago, dude. Yeah, so you were right about that for sure.
So first off, props to West Coast Dave Vendors and 99 Newsstand for obviously reaching out to CGC and getting Matt Nelson on. So I definitely congratulate them to get them on there. It was awesome. I listened to the interview last night on my way home from work, and then I closely re-listened to it again just an hour ago when we were talking, just to take down some notes, because I was, like you said, I was planning on making a video, my reaction to the whole thoughts on it, and it was just under an hour, and I thought overall it was pretty good. They did ask some important questions. Obviously, I was hoping that they would get some heavy hitter questions on there, but obviously you can't expect to get everything answered going into this interview, knowing that if you ask something maybe a little controversial or I don't know, whatever it may be, it could be pretty off-putting, and then he can say, like, we're all set, I'm all done with the interview, I'm not going to answer anything else. So you definitely have to be a little cautious going into an interview, something like that, especially when you don't have a rapport with a person. You just like if you were a news reporter and you're interviewing a big politician, you ask them something pretty offensive, they just may leave. So I applaud them for some of the questions. We can delve more into the specifics of the questions and obviously the ongoing investigation. So that's my quick early thoughts on the interview.
Yeah, so I appreciate you, Dave, for saying all that. Like you said, they did ask some difficult questions, and I did feel like Matt kind of sidestepped some because legally he had to for some of them. But I do feel like
Absolutely.
he was pretty forthcoming on some other topics as well. And there was actually some things that came out that I was actually surprised to see in that interview. Like for them to talk about that maybe in the future there could be a 9.9 pre-screen. That
Yeah, we can
was
talk about. We'll talk
that
about that.
was quite interesting to hear. And for him to
Yeah.
also say there's probably some 9.8s out there that could be a 9.9 was also really interesting to hear. You know what I mean? Because that tells me that there are some, differences on obvious. We all know this already. There's differences on opinion on 9.8 versus 9.9, and they talked about how like you could have a tick on a 9.9, which I was shocked to hear
I'm,
because I felt like a 9.9 was
I'm
like almost perfect. You know what I mean?
that I'm glad we you pinpointed that specific statement that Matt Nelson. We can talk about that after if you want.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah, sure.
about the 9.9 portion. We can because that was the actually what I
That was
gathered
really,
from the
yeah.
whole interview. That was the actual breaking news that I was kind of like, wow, that they actually dropped that they're seriously thinking about doing a 9.9 pre-screen. But we can talk about that after.
Sure. Okay. So basically, there's a lot of things that I want to touch on. They mostly touched on the scandal, which I'm going to try to break it down as best as possible, and I'll have Dave
Sure.
here add in anything else that I am missing. Essentially, 9.9 Newsstand and West Coast Dave Avengers basically broke like the news within the last month or so. I think it's been a couple weeks now. Basically, that there has been an individual, because Matt Nelson confirmed that it is one individual, that is not multiple to his, knowledge. He also said that no one at CGC is involved, which is good to hear.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's true. I assume it's true if he said that. They're pretty, straightforward on a lot of this stuff, and I'll talk about more of that later. Essentially, there was a guy that he would buy two copies of a book. He'd buy 9.8 and then like a 9.2, 9.085 maybe, and he would open the case of the 9.8 and he'd put in the 9.0 or whatever lower grade copy, and he would resubmit it for a reholder, and then he would submit his 9.8 copy back in to get a 9.8. So now he went from a 9.0 and a 9.8 to two 9.8s by spending, 80% less than he should have. And then he was
Yeah.
using that to sell to others. And essentially, there was, I think the way they figured it out was like there was a book that was a 9.8, and if you looked at the book, it did not look like a 9.8.
Yeah.
Then you could look at the certification and figure it out that this is, not right. And then what I think they even looked at like the eBay sales for this person, and figured out that this was, a constant theme. And then within, I don't know, a week or two, like CGC put out not just a statement, they put out a whole list already that they had dug deep. And they said they had several meetings about it. It's been very stressful at CGC. Of lists of books that were impacted. Now they're asking people with these books to send them to CGC for them to either authenticate and send back to you, or if it is a book that you bought, let's say you bought a 9.8 Spider-Man 300, which was by far the most on the entire list, they would compensate you for that specific book. And when I was looking at the list, it was all Marvel. Like, I don't know if you noticed that.
Just about.
I didn't
Just
see
about.
any DC on that entire list.
Two books.
Okay, so there you go. And there was what 300 on the list. So
yeah, 350. Sorry to interrupt.
No,
350 books. I want to say maybe 98% were Marvel. There was a TMNT #1 on the list, along with another indie book I can't think of, and maybe I think 2 or 3 DC books. One was the that famous Adam Hughes Black Cat cover.
Yeah, was it like Catwoman 51 or something like that?
Yep, that was signed by him.
Mm-hmm.
So that was potentially a forged signature. Who knows? I don't know what the
There
book
was
was.
also
There was a Superman book.
There was also a AF-15 signed by Stan.
We'll talk about that.
Well,
We'll talk about that.
and before we get any further, and I'll jump back to you if I miss anything. Obviously, this is not the first time CGC's had any scandals. We had the C2E2
Nope.
whole thing
Yep.
with the UF4s, with the
The
acetate
acetate
covers,
gate.
acetate gate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Added by
Now we
Comics and
we
Clayton
got
Crane.
we had acetate gate, and now I'm declaring this one a slab gate.
Obviously,
I got this slab gate. Yep.
MJ Comics has gotten a bunch of books from CGC that were the books were in the wrong cases. Like all the books were right,
Yeah.
and the cases were
Yeah.
right, but they were not in the right cases. And this has happened before. Books were backwards, upside
Yeah.
down,
Terrible
in
quality
books,
control. Yeah.
terrible quality control,
With
price hikes.
mosquitoes.
Yeah, price hikes on top of
You
this,
name it.
multiple price hikes on top of all of this. And there's another thing, and I want to touch on it really quick, and I'll throw it back to you because I feel like I've been talking forever. Another thing is
Go ahead.
CGC's had books where they encase it, they send it back to you, and the book moves around. And that happened to me personally. I had a book, and this is the book I'm going to show it off right now. I'm going to actually make myself a little bit.
Oh, nice.
My TMNT won. When I submitted it to CGC at the con, I got it signed and graded. Came back in 8.5. But when it came back, it took me like a month to figure out that it was moving inside the case. Like the inner well was messed up, and it happened to Sticky Goose as well on like I think a 9.6 or a 9.8 copy of ASM 300. And to CGC's credit, they fixed my book for free. They had Sticky Goose submit his 9.6 ASM 300 back to them, and they just rebought him a different copy for free. And so they have done a lot of things that people would not agree with, but they also, and sometimes like they fix a lot of their issues. I don't, Dave. I've been talking a lot. I want to hear your thoughts on the scandal or anything else.
What's up, Alex? He was asking a question about what's in the glass. I'm actually drinking a little Scottish style ale. It's going to be on my upcoming beer of the month video, which I like to make. So look for that as well. So shout out to Alex from Comic Addicts. Yeah, I can attest to the magazine style cases. I do have a Golden Age Wonder Woman book, and they actually encased that in a magazine case, which I can't stand because obviously it's a slightly oversized Golden Age book, not your traditional Golden Age size book. So they put it in there, and it shifts. It shifts in the case.
Is this one of the newer cases? Because this is a newer case. Okay,
it's not a newer case. I'm assuming it's an older one. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah. What were we talking about specifically on
we're talking about the slab gate that
yes.
you called it.
Yeah, slab gate. So I think by now everyone in the community who's wanted to hear about what's been going on is pretty well informed on what's been going on with the switcheroo with the cases and stuff like that. And I think kind of want to talk more about specifically about the interview that happened 2 days ago on West Coast Dave Ender's channel, featuring 9.9 Newsstand in there as well. Because they were like you said, they were the two people that were breaking the news on the information, and that goes back to whether or not Matt Nelson and his other executives and workers at CGC even knew about it before they even broke news. That was one of the.
They did not.
Yeah, from the interview, they had no idea. So props to everyone in the community who's been doing a lot of the backbreaking research, finding these books in question that were tampered with, and in fact that they were actually tampered with, and what they were saying that it was believed to be just one individual, as far as they're concerned, from their early investigative research that tampered the books, and we all know who. I think most of us know who the individual is by eBay name and or but I still kind of find it hard to believe that it's only been this one individual that's been doing this. I think they found books going back to at least 10 years that this has been an ongoing issue. Because do you frankly believe that somebody's been submitting 350 books?
Did you say
Yeah,
10 years? Oh my
10 years.
god, dude.
This couldn't have been done in 1 year. Let's be realistic here.
Sure.
That you're going This is a pretty invasive, backbreaking project that you're doing. Takes time. Takes time to purchase these books. It takes time to find some of these books. Some of these books are quite rare. Takes a lot of capital to buy some of these books. Even though, yeah, you're buying them at a lower grade, you still have to do a lot of work. Find the book, find the actual 9.8, take the book out, swap it over for another one, and so forth. So this is not something that's been done overnight. This is from what many people believe to be at least a decade's worth of work. And that's why I think it's it's kind of mind-boggling that CGC has been saying that this has just been one individual, when a lot of people in the community have been finding out that from messaging other people that they bought books from an associate from this person who had been selling it at shows in the New York region. So this person's from New York.
Okay.
And as it was said in the eBay page, they were from the New York State. So they were selling it at some local shows in New York. And it was even reported by Thorough that a comic book shop in New York City was also involved by the name
Really?
of Comic Book Station. And there's receipts behind this as well.
Okay.
So I
I'm
find
learning
this
stuff here too.
really, really hard to believe that CGC, with the amount of information that they have at their disposal, that and they've also have a private investigative group that is a rather well-known private investigative group that they
That
mentioned.
was another interesting fact.
You know,
they went outside to hire.
they had to. They
Well,
had to.
and what is it? Blackstone that owns them now, or whatever.
Blackstone is the parent company that bought them
Yeah.
out.
So
And,
they don't play. They are about making money,
no.
and they are going to make. They said in the interview, like, they're going to prosecute this person to the fullest
Oh, yeah.
extent. There's going to be lawyers involved. Like, CGC wants to clear
yeah.
their name, and so far, I'm pretty impressed with everything that they've been doing. So, go on. Sorry.
Yeah. So Blackstone, like you said, don't play. They're a multi. I believe they own over $1 trillion worth of assets across a multitude of sectors. They're all over the place. So when you have somebody like CGC as one of their babies, they're gonna protect them to the extent.
Right.
So I was when I heard that the investigative firm was called Kroll, I'm pretty well aware of the company. They're an investment firm as well, investigative firm out of New York City. And I did a little bit of research on the company, and from what I gathered, the company provides investigative, intelligence, and security services. The company also offers risk mitigation services, including forensic accounting, valuation, litigation consulting, electronic evidence and data recovery, business intelligence, and investigations. They also are unmatched in capabilities in identifying and investigative issues relating to fraud, corruption, money laundering, and embezzlement. Help organizations identify wrongdoings, recover assets, and seek legal remedies anywhere worldwide.
Wow.
So they don't play. They don't play. So something that probably no one has talked about yet is that company and their, and what they can provide. So when Matt Nelson said that they're prepared to prosecute to the fullest extent of the law, best believe that they will.
Oh,
For any people
100%.
who have been denying. A lot of people have say, no, they're not going to do anything. They will. They will.
100%
They're gathering their information.
If I'm this person, after I guarantee that person that did this, guarantee they watched that interview by now. 100% they've watched the interview. If I'm them, like, I'm not giving anyone legal advice whatsoever. I assume this person is trying to get rid of as much stuff and leave the country. I would assume that's what they're probably going to do.
Yeah, because from the list, and we can talk about that list, we're talking about assets well over in the $1 million range.
Yeah, so I had the list pulled up here.
Okay.
Hunting Comics, they can go after this guy as hard as they want. He's still just one actor. We need confirmation that CGC slabs can't be tampered with without leaving evidence, and no one is able to guarantee that. That is, that would probably be the defense that this person would use. But I would assume that CGC, if they are going to go after a guy, and they're using this company that you talked about, there's
Yep,
going to
Pearl.
be
Yep.
plenty of evidence.
There's plenty of evidence.
Plenty of evidence to go
Plenty
against
of
that person.
evidence.
I
Yeah.
still don't,
And
I don't know the name of the seller that you've been talking about.
so he goes. The seller went by several names.
Okay, all right,
So
interesting.
you can still look up. You could probably still look up the sales under that, and you know if you look up the specific book in the sales, because it's you look up like for example a 9.8 what is it Black Cat Mark Jewelers. There's not going to be many of them on eBay. You can find
All right.
find the sale, and then you can find the seller associated with the sale. And
What is that? 90 Spider-Man 94.
194, I think it's the first Black Cat.
194 Mark Jewelers. I'm gonna look it up right now.
Yeah. So there's so one of the names they went by is Comic Selects.
Okay.
And this is like I'm not obviously going to get in trouble by naming names. This is all well known. This has all been repeated by many people.
Sure.
They're not gonna do anything to somebody like me. Comic Selects was one of the names. I believe Briva 3 was also another name associated with the seller.
Okay.
And I believe there was also one more name, but I cannot recall the third name.
Okay.
Let me know if you're able to pull up the.
I'm looking right now.
Some of the sales, or because they should still be up there unless eBay pulled them.
There's it's not Semper Fi, is it? I don't think that. I don't believe that's it because that person. I know who that is.
Let me take a look.
So the highest one here is a 9.8 from October.
Okay.
For 3,200 from Semper Fi, but I believe that is that cannot be him because that person. I've seen them on Instagram, and I know that person's a good dude. So
let me see.
I'll just read off the names if you want me to. I don't know if you can see these.
I can see them, but those don't.
Unless they pulled it.
It's possible. The other thing we can always look at is the Amazing Spider-Man. Was it what issue is that? The also Mark Jewelers variant that was on the list. The black suit issue 152. Is that the issue?
I'm gonna pull up the list from CGC, and then we can go back to eBay. How about that?
Yeah, that works.
Okay.
Let me see if I can pull it up because I wonder if they scrub those sales now.
They might have, dude. Honestly. Okay. Here we go. Okay, Adventures of Superman 625.
Oh, there you go. There's your first DC book.
There's a DC book. Like you said, there's only a handful on the list.
Such a random book too.
So, okay, very next book, the second book on the list. I wanted to get your thoughts on this.
Yep, this was the one book that gave me the big red flag. Was this book that there was something really, really strange going on. Is this Amazing Fantasy 15 signed by Stan Lee, written 86 on the first page, and it came back as a signature series.
How does that happen?
So I believe the book is also signed on the back cover, if I'm not mistaken. You'd have to look up the image of the book if you could do that.
Let me see if I can. You keep talking.
Because I believe they took pictures of some of these books, and they might be in the database. What do you call it? So it's strange, assuming that it says Stanley in 86. It's signed in 1986. Would you assume that, Steve?
Yes, that's what I would assume, right?
Right, and if I'm not mistaken, CGC wasn't a company until what, 2000?
Yeah. So how does that happen? Because they've always said they will not verify anything unless they are there for it, right?
Yeah. So.
But so how is that a signature series then?
Yeah,
right?
and unless they only verified the signature in the back cover, because
Yeah.
I believe it was signed twice.
So I'm trying to look up that number, and
Does it not show up?
I cannot get it to show up. I
Oh,
wonder
that's
if it,
strange.
I wonder if it's been pulled.
Because he talked about that specifically. That book. They asked that question during the interview about the
So
AF-15.
and why does this one have a mark through it?
So the books that have marked through it that have already been received by CGC. There's a
Okay,
disclaimer at the bottom of the list,
okay,
and from what he said in the interview, this Amazing Spider-Man 1 at an 8.0 signed by Stan Lee was confirmed not to be tampered with.
okay. So the 6.5 is the one that is under question here.
Yes, because they still have not received it. So any of the books that have crossed out serial numbers, they have already received and they have already evaluated. Whether or not it's been tampered with, we don't know.
Okay,
It just shows off as a crossed label because they have received it in-house.
gotcha. Okay.
So I believe that book was sent right to them as soon as they found out that the news was, broke about the CGC scandal.
Otaku tour guide OTG says this is not an isolated incident. Scammers have been milking the CGC process for years.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if the person that is behind this, that CGC says is behind it, um, told friends about it, and they were also doing it. It's gonna be hard for them to uncover all of it, honestly, for sure.
Right, right.
Mark's here. Mark is here. What's up, dude? It says Stanley 86 written, not signed. Must be a qualified yellow label, meaning it has to have a second signature that was witnessed. The 86
Right.
isn't considered the signature.
That exactly. Yeah. So like I said, I believe the back cover was also signed by Stan Lee.
Okay.
And but we can't look up the serial. We just, I guess, we're having issues looking up the serial number. But
I'm having serious issues looking it up.
which is fine. So he was saying in the interview he is, hopeful that this book has also not been tampered with. If it is, obviously this would bring a big issue.
Right.
Having a book of that, that price and quality being tampered with, because that is the most expensive book on the list by far.
Yes, that's what I thought too.
So I'm trying to see if I can find that ASM 252 Mark Jewelers on the list.
So as we go on here, I'm just going to read off as you're looking up here. I mean, there's an ASM 2, very high grade, 7.5. Several ASM 3s, an ASM 5, 13.
Oh, boom. I just confirmed one of the sales. Okay, so there is still a sale on eBay.
Okay, so do you have it on your computer? Because then I could have you share.
No, I have it on my phone, but you can quickly look it up if you go on eBay.
Do you want to send me the link in Instagram and I'll pull it up and
yeah, I can do that.
We appreciate everyone for watching. This is kind of an impromptu thing. Dave and I were talking about. I was going to make a video. He's like, "Hey, I'm going to make a video." I'm like, "Okay, well let's just go live here and discuss this."
Yeah.
I do want to ask you, because the title of this video is "Should You Really Trust CGC Comics?" My thoughts are,
sent it to you.
Okay. My thoughts are that as I pull this up, everyone knows, if you've been watching my channel for any length of time, I'm a CGC stan. Almost all my books are CGC books. My personal opinion, obviously, any company, any school, any business, there's going to be issues, right? And oh yeah, here we go. Okay. I personally believe this, despite the issues, and there's been several, I mentioned a bunch earlier, I still personally trust CGC with my books because they've been so transparent about everything. Because I feel like they always try to do the right thing. Like I said, I talked about, like they fix this book for free. They fix a bunch of other of my books for free. Feels like they're trying to do the right thing here legally. They fixed a bunch of other books for free for other people, like Sticky Goose. They ended up, despite the first couple things that they announced, they ended up finally doing the right thing with Acetate Gate. Depending on whether or not you agreed with how many times it took them to do that, eventually they did. And I do feel everyone should be given a second chance. And I just feel that, especially after watching and listening to that interview by Matt Nelson, he's a real genuine guy. And I feel like even better about CGC after listening to the interview. Like, I already felt that way before listening to that. Obviously, it's a big scandal. And we're going to pull up one of the books right now that you were able to find. This is an ASM 252 Mark Jewelers with the label here, being sold by Comic Selects. 286, 95.4% positive sellers here. What can you tell us about this book, Dave?
So this was actually one of the books that were early on in question of being tampered with. This, along with there was a Hulk 181. But I believe it was this book and the 181 that was two of the books early on that that people found that seemed to be tampered with. Obviously, this is a very pricey book, and the thought process is obviously that you're looking at it, you can see it's doesn't appear to be a 9.8. Trying to see.
I mean, I see a couple of ticks. It's not horrible. Let me see the back. Let me see the back. So why did people think this was one of the ones they tampered with? Just because they were able to tell by looking at it, or what?
Yeah, they were. Well, they I believe it was the what do you call it? The serial number that was attached to this book.
That was a big thing in this case.
And
right?
Yeah, the serial number attached to this book, and then I believe they were able to look back in recent sales. I believe you have up to 3 months or so on eBay before the sales. You can't go back, I believe, past that. And they were able to match that serial number with a different book. And I think that's when it started raising red flags.
Okay, so basically they're able to look at a book and see, okay, this is a different book entirely. You can tell this one has ticks in certain areas, and it's not
this
over
book
there.
in particular has a certain manufacturing defect where some of the books on the top have a slightly different shade in that dark reddish purple hue.
Right here, over here in the corners, probably.
Here, yep, here, and then that exactly. Some covers are a little bit lighter, some are darker, and the book that they pinpointed with was lighter as well. So we're not talking about a defect as well. We're also talking about
they went Woodward and Bernstein here, dude.
Like I said, I obviously give a lot of props to all these people who have been doing all this backbreaking work, finding these books. But this was one of the earlier examples that people started finding out was with the Mark Jewelers. And like I said, you pinpointed that name, Comic Selects. You notice that their feedback rating is now 95 point something percent. It was much higher up until recently.
Yeah, let me look at this.
Because of the negative feedbacks. And if you go to their page, their store is blank because eBay has pulled off all of their listings. And this was actually one of their last sales on eBay before they got pulled. If you look at the sale, I believe it was in December.
Okay.
So,
right. I can't click on their negative feedback. Normally, you can click on the feedback and it'll show you.
You see how you're on their feedback profile, and now it says Briva 3.
You're right.
So that was one of their other names that they went by. So
Comic Selects and Briva 3. Okay.
Yeah.
So, like I showed earlier, none of those people that were showing on like that ASM 194 were a part of this. So please don't take anything negative from that. We were just we were trying to look up who it was, and so we apologize if anything was shown that
there was any confusion on that.
Yeah, any confusion. Obviously, it is Comic Selects, Briva 3, and anyone else. So, well, that is quite interesting. That and you were able to figure that out from what 9.9 Newsstand and West Coast Avengers.
Yeah,
reporting on their YouTube and on Instagram.
they
Which
they were
the
reporting
Instagram I
it.
feel like was probably the bigger one because I feel like a lot of people go on there to post books and to look at things. I feel like the Instagram is probably the bigger of all of that, but YouTube obviously you can share that anywhere as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't take any credit for investigating any of this. All this was information I gathered from Ryan from Automatic Comics, from Swaggle House, from Thorough. They're the ones, and many others. They're the ones that did all the investigative work. I'm just reporting something that was already reported.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to go back to this list here, and I'm going to show off any of the other books as well that we haven't got to because we only went to like a handful of books so far.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these are just major keys and very high grade.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Another one signed by Stan at 8.0.
Mm-hmm.
That looks like it was witnessed. Signed by Gary Conway and Stan Lee. I think that's what is it? The Death of Gwen Stacy right there, 121.
Yes, yeah.
Obviously,
so.
a bunch of not a bunch. There's a handful of first
A few.
Punisher.
Not many. The 194s and the 300s, I believe, were the two most slabbed books.
Yes, that is interesting.
On the list, and you see 9.8, 9.8, 9.8 for the
when I
194.
was going through the list, my first instinct was to look for the books that I have in my personal collection to see if any of them were on the list. Thankfully, none were. That's great to hear. And then the next thing I noticed is that how many 194s and 300 9.8s there were, which is a lot. A ton of 238s. So actually, all 194s were 9.8s because they start with the highest grade and then they go down. So all 194s were 9.8s. And as you can see, you said the line through are the ones that have been received by CGC to.
Correct, and we don't know whether or not they were tampered with or not. We don't know. It's just been received in-house by CGC.
And what's insane is the amount that are still on the list, right? Like how many people had these books that don't know about this?
Right. So that's why, like, the bringing of the awareness to the community has been, very good. You can't imagine how many, this obviously tons and tons of collectors out there that don't watch anything on YouTube. They don't watch IG, Reels. They don't watch anything. So, what Mount Nelson talked about in the interview is like they've been reaching out to these other third-party companies that these books may have been purchased from, so that they can get the information from these people, so that they can actually submit the books to CGC to determine whether or not the books have been tampered with.
There is 19.6 ASN 300, and this interesting that they're at the top because actually I thought it was supposed to be the highest grade first, but yeah. So he did say like he wouldn't mention the third-party companies, but it definitely sounded like Comic Link, Comic Connect, and Heritage.
That was one of the notes I wrote down, that he actually avoided the question by he didn't want to name names, but he's working with several third-party companies, and then he also mentioned that 350 books out of the 10 million graded by CGC. Yes, it's minuscule as he was saying it, but it's still obviously enough to impact the community.
Yeah, so that's interesting because as you and I both own several graded books. I mean, it's hard. Like personally, I would prefer to buy like a major grail like this already graded, so you know the grade, you know what it's worth. You don't have to worry about whether should I get this pressed and it end. Worry about it. Like I would prefer to buy a bigger grail already graded. Now here's the thing though, like you and me, we've both submitted a ton of books, right? Like we know the books that we submitted are legit, right? And so it's hard, like you said, this is a very, very, very minuscule number of books.
It is. In the grand scheme of things, it's very, very small.
But it does make you think, man, like, how many of the books have I touched, or is there really any others in my collection that are not legit? You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's always that concern.
There is that concern. Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
My God, we're still on the ASN 300s.
Yeah, I think there was 104, 105, something like that. It was ridiculous. It was nearly a third of all the books on the list.
That is
for
insane.
the ASM 300 because grantly so, it's the most graded book on any grading platform. You look
I
at
thought,
any grading platform, it's the top graded book,
it's interesting.
numbers wise.
I thought Karate Kevin owned all the ASM 300s.
Ah, awesome.
Oh shit. We got an Avengers 1. That's another very high price book. This is probably
Yeah, yeah,
the
several thousand
second,
dollars.
probably second or third highest, valued book on this
Yeah, it's
list,
up there.
and one of the questions,
There's your Catwoman right there.
there it is. There it is. Yeah.
Yep.
One of the questions that I had is what are they going to do about all these people that do not resubmit these books in the CGC, right? Like, I mean, we
Oh,
can
like
go through. Okay, here we
they
have
weren't
we have a
in
GSX one,
touch.
Hulk 181 as well. Yeah. So what are they going to do about all these books that aren't submitted? Are they just going to be like, well, we tried, or like, how are they? It's going to be almost impossible to find all the people that own all these books, right? So,
Yeah,
like,
I was gonna
what's
say,
the best way for them to do that?
yeah, you just don't know because say like for example, I bought a book on Comic Link, right?
Hmm.
And then I never knew the book was tampered with. I bought it in good faith, buying it from Comic Link, a well reputable, auction house.
Hmm.
And then I sold it in the second hand privately to a dealer, to a friend, whatever.
Oh,
And I don't know the book at all. Obviously, I don't own the book at all, and I'm not in contact with that person. I don't know their name, their number, anything like that. So how does that person know unless they actually go on CGC's website and look up their serial number? Like if they're not even aware of the actual scandal that is going on, how does somebody get in touch with that person?
right. What's interesting is there are 3 first appearances of Thor here, and
Yep, they've already
all
been, they've already been submitted back.
yep.
Yeah.
And I tried to look up these certs as well, and none of those are coming up. So
So what he did mention that they were planning on scrubbing the serial numbers if those books were in fact tampered with. So maybe that's what's happening. And obviously he said that any of the books, because say you own that book, you paid, I don't know, whatever the case may be, $5,000 for that book,
right,
and now the book is worth $3,500. You're stuck now in a pickle because they said they're only going to provide you current FMV, as they should. It's the FMV is FMV at that time when you get the book, and
right.
say the book's only $3,500. How do you get that book back to that individual? That purchased that book, and vice versa. Obviously, if you bought that book, say in 2015, now obviously that book is probably worth more money now.
Right.
Now you're in a good situation where you're getting more money back for FMV than what it was when you purchased it back then. Obviously, I believe there's probably going to be more of a situation where there's people who bought books more recently where the FMV has dropped significantly.
Yes,
And
like, and they talked about that in the interview as well.
yeah.
There really wasn't an answer to that.
No, he kind of skipped over that if you listen to that carefully, and the one interesting factor here is those books, like the rare books, ASM 300, it's a common book, even a 9.8. But if you had like an ASM 252 and a 9.8 Mark Jewelers, how do you replace that book?
Right. Well, and
there's not many out there.
well, and have they figured out if they're going to pay these people the FMV of the book? It sounds like they are,
They're going
or
to pay them,
or
right?
or are they just going to do like they did a Sticky Goose and find another
Give you,
book and replace it for them? You know what I mean?
yeah,
That almost feels like the cheaper option, honestly. And
right.
if it's
And
someone that has a book that we talked about, the FMV has gone down, it almost feels like the better option would be to replace that book than to give them the money, right? Like, it's the same thing essentially, because you're giving them the money to get that book. But it feels like the better thing to do would be to just replace that book. I don't know, Dave. What do you think about that?
Yeah, like I said, they're gonna give you FMV on the book, and I believe that they would. I don't know if they're going to go out and purchase the book for you and like replace it. Like he was saying, they might contact all these different third-party companies to get replacements for you, but you're not going to be able to replace some of these books.
Right.
How are you going to say if that AF-15, whatever that was, 6.5, signed by Stan Lee, is one of the tampered books? If it's truly tampered with, that's not an easy book to find. Like I said with the Mark Jewellers book, that's not an easy. There's not many Mark Jewellers books in some of these. They're not easy books. Yeah, an ASM Newsstand 9.8, it's an easy book to find. You can find them. They're there. But some of these books are not easy. So what happens in that situation? And that's when he was saying this is going to be a book by book case, that we're going to have to, discuss with these, 350 books when it comes down to it. So who knows what you're going to do? But I'm reading some of these comments here. Yeah, I did notice that when he what Hunting Comics is saying about with 9.9 Newsstand, because they did, about the images, they randomly started adding images on certain books out of the blue.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's hard because you can't go back, and do that for all the other books you've already graded because they're gone. You know what I mean?
Right.
It almost feels like this was kind of like preemptive of. I think their thing with that is that there were some people. I think MJ Comics was one where they always took a photo of their book before they submitted it and talked about what grade it would be. And then
that's actually very good.
And they'd come back and there would be ticks on there that weren't there before, right?
Yeah.
And so I feel like that was CGC's cover for it, and maybe they talked to an insurance person or their legal department, and that's probably why they did it. I don't think that was related to the current situation at all, but I could see how someone could come to that conclusion.
Yeah. And that's a good question. Like I was saying in the beginning of the live stream, there are some questions, some heavy hitting questions that I wish they asked. And West Coast Dave Enders asked, I thought he asked the majority of the great questions. I think, to be honest, 9.9 kind of like sugarcoated a lot of the questions. He was kind of being all friendly and willy-nilly with Matt Nelson, which is fine. But he, at least to me, he kind of was portrayed more as a CGC fanboy, more so than anything else. Did you get that picture at all, Steve?
I did feel that way. I also felt like a lot of his questions, he would talk for like 3 minutes.
I feel like he talked a lot more than Matt Nelson did.
He talked,
yeah,
and then eventually would ask a question, right? Yeah. And that's fine. Like,
no, that's fine.
You do it however you want. Those guys broke the thing, so they can do it.
It's your interview. You do it however you want.
And and you got to, if you got that connection, you got to keep that connection. Especially with the CGC grading company, like Reggie does. I mean, he's been down to Florida many times. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I agree with you. There was some softballs in there. But also, you don't want to invite someone on there and treat them like crap either. You know what I mean? I understand that as well. I do expect their fees to go up to cover this legal investigation, to cover all these books that they're having to give to other people. I expect.
Absolutely.
I don't know how much. I'm assuming probably like a $5 increment at some point this year. They're not going to do it right away because that'd be bad press on top of bad press, right?
Yeah. You don't want bad press
I expect
right away.
Probably June or July, maybe August.
Yeah.
Somewhere in the summertime, they are going to announce
it'll come
up to cover and to cover inflation as well, but to mostly, in my opinion, would be to cover this.
It'll be to, obviously to cover the investigation. We don't know how long this investigation is going to. I still think, and not just me, but many other people think that there's multiple players, and for them to dig deeper into the, into the cellar, so to speak, and finding out these other players, you got to do some more investigative work. So, who knows how long this investigation is going to go on for? I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with the sports autograph forgery scandal that happened in the early 2000s. That was called Operation Bullpen. If you look it up on Yahoo or Google, there's a big FBI archives file on the autograph forgeries, and the FBI was heavily involved in that investigation, and it took them 6 years to get that information, all the information that they needed to bust these individuals. It was pretty wild. I don't know if you're familiar with the sports autograph forgery scandal that happened in the early 2000s or late 90s. Basically, in a nutshell, about 75% of autographs from sports athletes were forgered, and it was from sports cards
Holy
to
cow.
footballs to jerseys, you name it. They had accumulated, geez, like hundreds and millions of dollars worth of forgery. And the Marino family, the head guy, Marino, actually served jail time. And there was over 20 people that were charged in the investigation. So I obviously don't expect this to reach anywhere near that. But best believe that these people can be charged if it, in fact, it comes down to that when they complete their investigation.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. That's
So
I did not know about that.
After rambling on it, do expect fees for grading to go up eventually. They also have to pay out, obviously, all these books that were tampered with, because they're going to have to pay out for FMV.
Right.
That obviously comes with cost. And the other thing that he kind of sugarcoated over was, are they going to redesign the cases? And you want to talk about that, Steve?
So my thoughts were that to answer your question here at Hunting Comics, I don't disagree with that whatsoever.
Oh, no, absolutely. Yeah.
I don't disagree with what you have to say whatsoever. I agree with it. But having said that, I do think they will do that because of that. They'll make us pay for it on the top end. Mm-hmm. And it's just the way of life. It does suck. What was your question again? Oh, the new case.
Well, what were your thoughts about his response to, is there plans on doing a recasing, design, whatever the case may be, to add some added securities to the CGC case? It
sounds like that has been discussed. And it also sounds like he didn't want to talk about it because he doesn't want people to be like, oh my God, we're getting a new case. Have him call in and bug us about it. Now, I did find it interesting that he kind of danced around that. Kind of sounded like they were doing it without doing it, but he also, in the same interview, said they're going to do a 9/9 pre-screen. So like, he danced around one topic that was probably way more important, but then talked about the 9.9 pre-screen, which it sounded like one of the people on the panel there was pretty excited about. I don't know. It definitely sounds like they're going to do something. I don't think they've figured out what they're going to do yet. And I feel like part of that is their engineers are going to have to come up with a couple different designs, because whenever you do or change things, you have to go to your engineers and they're going to come up with probably 10 to 15, 20 different designs. And then they're going to pick out a handful, and then they're actually going to create those. And then they're going to look at those and decide a handful, maybe some tweaks, and then they look at them again before they finally eventually pick one to do. So if they're going to change a case, I expect it to probably be within a year or so.
This takes time. This is not something that's going to be done in a month. There's a whole process to this.
It sounds like they're spending a ton of manpower and hours, like contacting with the investigation, calling these different third-party companies, figuring out how they're going to pay for this, contacting the lawyers, insurance, and then they did probably slip in something to the engineers about that. That is probably on the back burner compared to everything else, but it did sound like at some point that will probably be pushed to the forefront as this investigation, whenever ends, does end. Did you get that same feeling?
Yeah, I thought so too, and he kind of held that to his sleeve, that he didn't want to give up too much information on that. So at least there was definitely a discussion behind the scenes that they're working on something in a preliminary standpoint, on working on doing something with the CGC cases.
Right.
And then he did talk over about it, when he did that breaking, we're going to do 9.9 pre-screening. And I was like, oh boy. I thought that was the big surprise there during the interview. That caught me off guard.
I did
That he
not
talked
expect that
about
at all. I
no,
didn't. That was the one thing that I never would have even thought about at all.
no, that one threw me off. I did know about. He did talk about it very, very briefly. That there is an introduction to pulps, the pulp grading. He talked about that very, very briefly. I am excited for that, and so that's something that they've had already. It's already designed. The case has already been made. It's just a matter of introducing it. So he, that obviously.
Can you explain to everyone what that is if people don't know?
So graded pulps. Pulps have been around pre, the comic book golden age. So like you're talking about books from the 20s, the 30s, thicker books. They're made out of pulp. Some of the earliest forms of paper, and they would tell us some. More often the desirable books were like the H.P. Lovecraft books. Loba horror, some sci-fi, really cool, just really cool stories, and much thicker books. They're than your traditional comic book, much larger. So this is going to be a completely different case size, and I believe so. Somebody also mentioned in the chat. Oh, Hunting Comics. Have you guys seen the slab options for manga grading? Yes. So that would also potentially lead into CGC also using a similar case for manga if they wanted to. But they pivoted towards pulp before they went into manga because they thought that there was a larger market for pulp based off of the sales that pulp have been getting on like Heritage and Comic Link and Comic Connect. And to answer that question, I have seen those cases. Not many people have been talking about the manga grading cases by Beckett. I think they look fantastic. And they have some really cool label designs along with it to go with the your manga that you submit. So I thought those look really cool, to be honest. And I might submit a book over there just to see what it looks like in person. So yeah, really cool.
I have a couple of questions. I have a couple of questions, and we can get out of here pretty soon because I know it's been almost an hour and it's pretty late on the East Coast. My question to you is: we kind of talked about the case and how the engineers are probably going to come up with their design when they're, this whole thing is over with. What would you do to fix the case to make sure this does not happen in the future? To make sure people are buying the book that is actually in the case with the certification number? What would you do? Or what would you ask for if you were, let's say, Matt Nelson, and you're asking the engineers to come up with something? How would you do it?
So let's be pretty honest and forefront about it in the first place that if somebody wants to break into that case and do anything to it, whether it's switching out books, whether it's tampering, doing anything in general, they're going to do it. If there's a will, there's a way, right? It's at the end of the day, it's a plastic case. It's easy to get into, right? Would you agree?
I do agree.
So if somebody creates a new case, there's going to be somebody out there who's going to want to try to crack it and try to get over somebody. It is what it is. Speaking to the specific question on what would I recommend, I don't know. You're going to have to completely redesign the case. That's going to be the probably the easiest, obvious thing to do. Can there be some specific, anti-tampering designs on the inner sleeve that is not, easily visible to the naked eye? Is something that they could view maybe under UV or under black light, something that is not regularly detectable. Put a specific signature on the, how like we have these anti-tampering signature, codes on our dollar bills. If you look at the $100 bill, for example, there's a multitude of layers of security. Add some of those securities to the book. Add some of to the inner sleeve. Add some of those securities to the case. Multitude layers of security to add assurance that the book is going to be more difficult to tamper with if, in fact, you do decide to crack the case.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said there. I feel like personally they need to figure out a way. I know it's plastic. People can get into it, like you said. they've got to figure out a way. You know, when you go to Walmart to go buy like a video game or an expensive
Mhm.
thing, and they have this thing that they use to open said,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
exactly.
box.
Yep.
I feel like there's got to be a way for them to design something that the CGC case will only open that specific way unless it's completely destroyed. And they could say we're not going to take any destroyed cases, right?
Sure.
Unless you can certainly tell it's been dropped, right, at a
Mhm.
specific way. But you know, we look at the CBCS case versus the CGC case. It feels like the CBCS case, the new one, is a lot more sturdy,
It is.
stronger
It is.
feeling.
Do you have one?
You know, I think I do.
I I think you have one.
I do have one. I do have one.
'Cause it is vastly different in feel, and it looks a little bit more
I have
sturdier than
one,
the CGC case.
but it is
Um,
not the new label. And I'm
oh, that's
assuming,
fine. It's the same case.
yeah. Okay, that's what I thought. That's what I thought. Okay, give me just
Yeah,
a
same
second here.
exact case, just different label. Because I reholdered some of my books through CBCS just to get the new labels recently. It's the same exact case.
It's the exact same case, just a new label. Okay, that makes sense. Okay. Okay. I got this for like super cheap, and so that's why I got it. This is the only CBCS case in my collection.
Cool.
If you feel this, it feels insanely more secure
Yeah.
than this. And can you hear that?
Oh yeah, yeah.
You can hear it
I
moving
can hear
around
it.
in here,
Yeah, I
right?
hear a little bit. Yeah.
And
That's
nothing,
It's not moving.
nothing. This case, the case, we can talk about the label, but the case is significantly better. And I feel
Mhm.
like they're going to have to talk to, they may even have to call CBCS and be like, yo, how'd you guys do that? You know what I mean? So I don't know.
I don't think they're not gonna give up their
Probably not.
information.
Probably not.
And I think
Unless
and I
unless it's considered like a hefty payday. But no. So to answer your question, there's got to be a way to make it so it's way more secure, way more like
Yeah,
CBCS's case. I
yeah.
do agree. They got to do something on the inner well to make sure because
Mhm.
we know that the book is in an inner well and then that is inside the actual case. They got to
Sure.
figure out a way to make it so that inner well can only be verified by CGC to make sure, like you said, UV or something else.
Yeah, just add some hidden securities in there that we're not gonna be, too keen on noticing.
And they don't have to tell anyone what it is, right?
No, they're not gonna tell anybody. No.
No, they got to put like something in the back, an inner well, like a QR code or something, right? And like see
Yeah.
through, right? I don't know. That's. I feel like you and I have got pretty good
Yeah. That's for
ideas.
them to decide ultimately what they do with the cases. But well, we could go on. We have plenty of good ideas, and so do the people in the community on how they could revamp their cases and add more security. It's whether or not they choose to do so in the future.
So OTG is saying CGC fanboys remain fanboys. Sure. Like Taylor Swift, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't matter if she's dating Travis Kelsey or Timothy Chalamet or whoever, you know what I mean? Like they're gonna be fans of her regardless, and it's gonna be the same thing for CGC. I've said at
Yeah,
the beginning, I own all but one. Like all my other books are all CGC. I like CGC. I like their cases. For the most part, I like their labels. I like the consistency. I like their resale value. I love their customer service. Their customer service is amazing. And I just like them more. I just do. And I've talked about it. I feel like people should trust them still if that is something that they are contemplating. It is up to each individual person, but I feel like the transparency of CDC on top of their customer service and my personal like dealings with CDC on multiple occasions on things that yes they have messed up for them to fix them the way they have and seeing how they have helped other people. I feel like people should trust CGC. I don't know how much money they're spending on this case. It's going to be a lot, and obviously we've talked about how we're eventually probably going to have to end up paying for it. But the fact that
quite a bit.
they're going to do this, it's going to cost them millions of dollars to get this situation figured out, and they are taking that. They know it. They know it's the right thing to do. They talked about Matt Nelson said, this is for the community, and they want to
Yeah.
make sure that the community is involved and the community is taken care of. And I feel like they are doing the right thing. And I always feel like they have done the right thing. We can talk about the price hikes. That's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
But in terms of customer service, in terms of doing the right thing, in terms of like the scandal or the acetate gate or anything else, I always feel like in the end, CGC does end up doing the right thing. So, Dave, you had different thoughts than me on the Matt Nelson interview. I thought it was great. You were able to find different things that I didn't notice right away. So I wanted to ask you, Dave, do you think people should still trust CGC, or should they trust CBCS, or should they just not grade books? Or what are your thoughts on that? Does this affect your opinion of your company?
First off, don't take my recommendation on what you should do with your books. It's your books. If you want to keep them raw, great. If you want to grade your own books, great. Choose whatever works for you. I still feel like if I'm going to send books off for grading in my personal books, I still feel comfortable sending my books off to CGC, to CBCS without any issue whatsoever. Yeah, now going forward, do I have to be a little more cautious, take some pictures beforehand, worry about some quality control coming back? Yeah, I do that when I submit books, as you should as well, because of all the horror stories we've heard of books, not being books you get back in return. But yeah, I'm not gonna, like I said, recommend one or the other, because I do both. I have raw books. The vast majority of my collection is raw. I probably only have about 50, 60 rated books, and they're both through CGC and CBCS. I believe in a fair trade market system, and when there's competition, it's good for everybody. So that's my thoughts on it.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I am not monetized. I did a whole video on not being monetized. Dave, I don't believe you're monetized either. This was just a topic that you and I talked about doing videos on. And
this is my only second time talking about this scam. I did a short, and then this is it. I'm not one of those people who have been covering it extensively. This will probably be the last I talk about this.
I have not personally sold books in a long time, so I'm not a flipper, and I would not consider myself an influencer either. Like if you look at my channel, like I post in the past, I posted a lot more a couple years ago, but like right now I'm only posting once or twice, maybe 3 times a week. And I'm not expecting them to get huge numbers. At this point, I'm doing it for fun. So my personal opinion is yes. Like I've said how I feel about CGC, and people can take it one way or the other. And like Dave said, my personal opinion can be different from yours. You do whatever you think is best for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also feel like go ahead.
Like I said, this video will also be on my channel, and like I said, this will be the last I talk about this topic, unless something big, comes out of this, that we find out that the investigation is closed, the information that came out forth, and that'll be it. But I won't be talking about any brand new updates that come out from this scam. I'm not here for the views. I could care less. I'm here about the hobby, talking about the books I buy, and just that's it.
Absolutely. I wasn't talking about us. Well, okay, I got you. CGC is good for your own collection. The issue is the secondary market. Until there's a real fix, I won't be buying any slabs for anyone. Okay, I get it. Totally get it.
Yeah.
I feel like we've touched on like almost everything in regards to, the different scandals, the different issues people have with CGC, our thoughts on it, the bigger books related to it, the actual seller that it's happening to. I feel like we've done a pretty good job. Anything else that we should talk about here, Dave?
Can we briefly talk about this will probably be the end of it, of the 9.9 pre-screen? I know we talked about it briefly, obviously, the breaking news that he's going to be eventually down the road doing pre-screening for 9.9s, and this will be one of the ways that I assume they're going to help recoup some of this money from the investigation is adding pre-screen 9.9s. whether, I don't know what the charge is for pre-screen, $5-6, probably $7-8. I don't know for a
And
current
it's
9.8 pre-screen.
it's
Eight
$8.
bucks.
I assume
Okay.
9.9 will probably be more like 10 or
Yeah,
15.
I've never done a 9.8 pre-screen, so I wouldn't know. But I figured it was right around that ballpark. But that will be a way for them to recoup some of the money that they've lost. People are going to take that gamble. Oh, do I want to take a gamble and crack my 9.8 and see if I can get that 9.9? And then he briefly talked about the grading scale. And if you and and he wrote the grading scale, as far as I'm concerned, from what they were saying. And if you look on their website, their grading scale, which is pretty vague, if you ask me, he said that, this is per quote, that there can be a tick for a 9.9. Right? You heard that as well,
That
which I
was said
highly
by
disagree.
9.9 Newsstand and confirmed by Matt Nelson, because he said he does remember saying that on another live stream. So
Yeah.
I find that very interesting. But I also feel
You
like
go.
he's a head grader, but I don't think he's involved in grading every single book, 85 million different collectibles.
No,
I
yeah,
don't see that
definitely
he's
not.
involved in every single book being graded. No.
You go on that grading scale on CGC's website. You look up what a 10.0, a 9.9, and a 9.8 is. As vague as it is, you look at a 9.9 and what it says. The collectible is nearly indistinguishable from a 10.0, but will have a very minor manufacturing defect. It will not have any evidence of handling defects. That's it. What's your thoughts on that?
I'm going to read what this person says, and then I'll get my thoughts. 9.9 pre-screen would be terrible for the market, would cause prices to crash further, would also be expensive. 9.9s are worth thousands, so they get higher reject fees and are way higher grading fees at 4%. 9.9 galore. Yeah. My thoughts are, I don't think they should do a 9.9 pre-screen.
Honestly, I think it's a money scam. It's an
100%.
easy way for them to acquire a lot of money in a very short time for that individual who wants to take the risk in submitting their whatever book at a 9.8, hoping to get a 9.9, and then it gets rejected. And then they have to send it back for reslabbing.
Yeah, so
yeah,
for sure. Like I have 60, 70 graded books right now. I have sent other books into CGC over the years and sold them. I have never personally, not once in my entire life, owned a 9.9, whether that's
same here.
Buying it from someone or submitting it. I've never once owned one. And it almost feels like maybe that's good, right? Like 9.9s and 10s are supposed to be so rare. But like even you and me, who's owned, I don't know how many different books you've owned, you know what I mean? But I feel like probably coming and going through my collection of easily over 200 slabs. That's maybe not 200, maybe like 150 different slabs that I've bought and sold or whatever, traded, whatever it is. Never once owned a 9.9.
Yeah, same here.
I only own like a handful of people in the community that have 9.9s, and I feel like that's the way it should be. You know what I mean? Like those are supposed to be insanely collectible, and so doing a 9.9 pre-screen is probably not the best for the community. But it also, like you said, feels like a big money scam. Like, okay, all right, because if we're submitting those books in for 9.9s, you know what that means, right? All these other retailers are going to be submitting loads of books for 9.9s, and they're going to jack up the price.
Because
let's say a variant they were going to sell for $100 at 9.8. Now they're going to get a 9.9. Now they want $400 for that, right? And they're only doing it. And so if it gets rejected, we'll just submit it back in for a 9.8. No big deal, right? It only costs them $10 as opposed to the price of $300.
Yeah. It's an easy way for retailers to recoup their initial costs to make these exclusives right off the bat.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's the only people that really benefit is the retailers, because these books are shipped to them. They're flawless before they get sent out to you, the purchaser of the exclusive. They don't have to sell it to you. They can just send it right to CGC and hope they get that 9.9 or 10. and then they sell it to you for 4, 5, 6x.
Yep. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree. So it sounded like 99 Newsstand was really excited about that. That's cool.
Yeah, I wonder why.
Sounds like he's got a lot of books that might be 99s.
Yeah,
I don't. I have some books that I hope might be 99, but most likely.
I wish him well on that.
Yeah, like
to
the
be
amount
honest.
of books that I've submitted, like I just
No.
expect all of them to be 9.8s, and I've expected
Yeah.
a 9.8 to be 9. Honestly, I feel like a 9.8 should be the industry standard, anyways, because like 9.9s and
For
10s
comics,
are so
yeah.
rare. Like
Comic books, definitely.
yeah, like I mean, what is it like 0.0001% are 9.9s or 10s, and it almost feels like those ones that are 9.9s and 10s, a different grader could say they're a 9.8. You know what I mean? And so who knows?
In a
to answer your
different
question, I think it's a bad idea. So
yeah, in a different collectibles market, 9.9s and 10s are more and more common. But in the comics, there's just multitude of layers to them that it makes it extremely difficult to get a 9.9 or a 10. Like I've owned. Go ahead.
Why would anyone pay hundreds of dollars more for a comic book? Stop letting CGC exploit. Yeah, it's their rarity. There are a lot of people now that want to own that 9.9 and be like, "Yo, look at my 9.9. You can't get that.
Yeah,
I got it."
that's what it.
You know what I mean?
That's ultimately what it comes down to. Yeah.
So what were you
know,
going to say? I'm sorry.
Like in other collectible markets, like I said, comics is not the largest collectible market out there, not by far. The sports collectible market, the coin collectible market is much larger. It is much more common to get an MS69 or MS70, which is the equivalent of a 9.9 or a 10.0 in the coin market. It's easier to get a near mint or perfect or mint grade because those coins are shipped from the mint to the grading facility uncirculated. Sports cards, much easier to get a 9.9 or a 10.0 because it's just a card. There's no extra paper to it, right? It's just one front, one back. Much easier thing to get a perfect grade. Comics is much more difficult. And so that's why they do tend to command a much more higher multiple than say a 9.8. And but yeah, that's what it is. It comes down to it's a rarity.
Burke has nothing but 9.8, so he's protecting his investment.
What's
that is
going
not
on?
true. I've got several low grades. My Brave and Bold 28 is a 2.0 with tape on it. So
there you go.
But no, I definitely don't own all 9.8s. I wish I did.
Yeah, I got some like 0.5s and 1.8s downstairs too. So
there you go.
I got a wide variety.
Yeah, they have a company called CBCS.
Yep. Yeah, Beckett's the parent company. Yep.
Yep. They do comic grading, and they do signature series different. I'm surprised that they still do that. Honestly, after that whole thing where that guy made a whole video about how he learned Sarah Pacelli's.
Yeah.
And then they're still doing it. I'm surprised.
You know, like nobody talks about that nowadays. Got brushed under the
no, and that guy's from another country, so I wonder how much they could have done anyways. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I think that's all I had to talk about.
Yeah, that's all I got. That was the last thing I wanted to talk about.
Cool. Well, make sure you guys follow Mark Spector Comics on Instagram and YouTube. This video will be posted there as well. Make sure you guys follow me as well, Burke Family 54 Comics on Instagram and YouTube as well. I had a great time, Dave. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, had a blast.
Hopefully next time Karate Kevin can join us. I know it's kind of last minute, but hopefully next time he'll jump on and talk about this. If you guys are watching this on a replay, make sure you guys leave a comment on the video, like it as well, and we'd love to have some conversations with you guys about this topic, CGC, whether you guys are still trusting them, what do you guys think about this scandal, and anything else as well. I appreciate you guys for watching. I'm Steve, and that is Dave, and we'll see you guys later. Oh, wait, I got to play this. And as always, go Cats.
Cowabunga. Sporking time.